The following is a special presentation of Who Are These Podcasts? Welcome to Bladtcast episode 600. To celebrate, Christian welcomes back to the show two Saturday Night Live legends. Comedian and activist Rafe Gutman in Tales from the Crypt, Bordeaux of Blood, and host of the game show Amnesia, the great Dennis Miller. Plus, someone even more animated than Jay Sherman and Artie Ziff. It's the greatest, the greatest Jon Lovitz. And now, the only man who could preside over so much greatness, here's Christian Blatt.
Yes, indeed. Thank you to the great Farad Muhammad for our intro there. Always wonderful when he's able to help us out. And I am indeed happy to welcome back to the Bladtcast star of Bladtcast number 400, Dennis Miller, and star of Bladtcast number 500, Mr. Jon Lovitz. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for being with us for this monumental occasion. Dennis, go ahead and start telling us what an honor it is to be here for Bladtcast 600. I'll listen.
Well, I'm proud of you, Christian. Jeez, I remember years ago when you told me that you wanted to start this, I thought I should get him on his right side and hold his tongue down because, so to make it to 600 episodes, God bless you.
Well, I appreciate that. And John, obviously you taught us both everything we know. We appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
John, where are you, John? At a banquet at the Desert Inn in 1963?
I believe that he's right next to the salad bar at Coco's.
I'm sorry. But I am in the country.
That's all he's allowed to say. And,
don't tell me you're replacing Maggie Smith in the Downton Abbey movie. There's Jerry. How are you, Jerry?
The great Jerry Bruckheimer, of course, joining.
He always wants to be on camera, and then he'll go, yeah, and then he jumps up. He's like,
well, I'm just wondering who's going to show us their ass first, Jerry or Lovitz. But we'll take some side action in the chat. And our friend
Johnny,
Farad Muhammad.
How's stand-up going, John?
Well, it's good. I've been booking myself because the agent I was at, agency I seen, was bought by another agency, and then they dropped me. I used to be at CA for 11 years. Anyway, I do it myself, and actually I'm making more money than ever. And,
why did they drop you?
Because I don't know. They said they want arena acts. And I go, well, there's only about 10 guys. I mean, there's a lot of more people doing arenas than ever, but not out of all the hundreds of stand-ups, what, 8 are doing arenas or not? It's not like it's crazy. But I don't
remember the old days, John, when the only guys doing arena were Maximus and Spartacus.
Right.
Well, I think Kevin Hart is a match for either of those two. So
Kevin Hart, I have never seen him, but he seems to, when I see him interviewed, he seems to have that accessibility that I always thought Dane Cook had. Remember years ago, and I've met Dane Cook since, and he's kind of a convivial, pleasant guy. But I used to marvel years ago. It seems to me he was the first one. Maybe Dice Clay did a couple nights, but Dane was selling auditoriums. And there's something about being accessible to the hoi polloi or something that allows you to do that. But you're right, Christian. Now I see guys I've never heard of selling 20,000 seats.
Yeah, I mean,
Steve Martin, remember, was doing I think stadiums, and then he quit. And then years later, Andrew Dice Clay, and he was the only one. And he was on SNL when he was doing it. And then I started really trying to do stand-up when I was 46. The first person, though, that said I should do stand-up is Dennis. And he brought me to a club, I remember, and first time they gave him 20. He did 15 minutes. They gave him $25, and he said, all right, let's go to dinner. And I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Now you have money to eat? We were dead broke, right? And another time he brought me, and I went up after him. They go, Jon Lovitz, yay, And then I didn't know what I was doing. 5 minutes, Jon Lovitz. And I go, oh, shit, you got to know what you're doing. But I started at the Laugh Factory, and Dane was there. He was just starting to get, really huge. And And then when he made it, he got a lot of backlash from people, not from established comics, but other guys. And I go, they're just, and he bothered him. I said, they're just jealous. He goes, I've been working at this for 16 years. But now now there's Joe Coy used to open for me. Now he's playing arenas all over the world.
I know. I talked to Joe Coy and he'll say, I've talked to him like 3 times in my life. Seems like a convivial cat. He told me, I was like, what are you doing this weekend? He said, well, I've sold out the Budokan in Micronesia for 3 nights or something.
It's amazing. By the way, Dennis, that's twice now you said convivial. What does that word mean?
It means repetitive. No, I'm trying to mellow in my old age and refer to people as in the most positive light. Convivial means, I guess, in old language, it would be a hail fellow, well met.
Well, I appreciate you both being hail fellows.
Very
well met,
convivial.
and yes, thank you, John. It's very convivial. I wanted to know if the two of you knew each other before you auditioned for SNL. Had you crossed paths, or was that the first time you guys met?
No. Well, we have the same story.
Well, Johnny, you go ahead and tell. All I remember is it starts on an L1011, which I don't even think is a flight that they do anymore, but it used to have that configuration of 2 seats on one side, 2 seats on the other, 5 in the middle. I got stuck with Lovitz in the middle. I felt like I was John Savage in the fucking rat cage.
No, we weren't in the middle. No, but what they were, it was September of 85. And they auditioned. Lauren was coming back to Saturday Night Live. It was all of the newspapers. Anyway, it came down to 10 men and 10 women, and they picked 6 people from Los Angeles. And the men were myself, Dennis, and Damon Wayans. So I was sitting next to Dennis, and he had a hat on like he does now. And I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, he must be bald." Then Dennis, go ahead, ask me, "What do you do?" I go, "Go ahead."
I was just saying that I always thought somebody should come up with a baseball hat that says, yes, bald underneath as the logo. I think you could sell that.
No, but I thought that must be why he's wearing a hat. He goes, what do you do? I go, I have the liar character. And then Dennis thought.
I thought this kid's like, an easy feed. He's sitting over there telling me about this guy who lies a lot. And I'm nodding my head and trying to be, let's say, convivial. And but I'm also thinking, what in God's name is he talking about? And then when we finally,
you may used to say, this chump has no chance.
Well, I'm sure everybody was looking for an edge, and you might.
No, but there's The interesting thing though is that the second day of auditions, one was in person. Then they put us on camera. I get there at 4:20. I was supposed to be there at 4:30. I was so nervous because I'm always late, but I was 20 minutes early, and I couldn't relax. Then I started falling asleep. Then I went in the control booth, and I saw Dennis on the studio, and he was being so loose and funny. And this, I go, okay, I got to be loose and funny like that. Anyway, we ended up both. Oh no, I got the show, and I was supposed to do Weekend Update. And a week later, Lauren said, "John, we're bringing in Dennis to do Update, and don't worry, you'll have plenty to do." So there was a real connection. I mean, I think, Dennis, do you remember those 2 guys that were in charge of Update from Boston?
I just remember Herb.
Yeah, but in the very beginning, these 2 guys from Boston were in charge of Update. So I was trying to be funny. I think this is why they replaced me. And they kept saying, no, play it straight. And I go, I am, but isn't it a comedy? Because I want to do stuff like, this just in. Like I went, I go, this just in. I was like, this just in. I can't believe it. But anyway, they ended up bringing in Dennis, which was great. But they ended up firing this guy. One of his name was Richard. This guy was so mad. He was only there 3 weeks. He was so mad. 3 years later, a book comes out. He wrote a book called Murder on the 17th Floor. And it was about somebody murdering a late night executive producer and pushing him out the window of Rockefeller Center. A whole book. He was there 3 weeks.
Well, John, Saturday Night Live, I always thought the stakes I just remember thinking you feel like you finally got in the golden kingdom, and if they take it away that quickly, that's why I always admired that Shane Gillis character. That can crush your spirit, for God's sakes. And
Yeah.
uh, I can see the guy getting that mad, but. You think Lauren was hurt by a book called? He was orgasmic that he got that far into that kid's kitchen that he would write a book like that.
I'm
I
sure.
just,
I'm sure he had one of his assistants, that Spade always called the Lornettes. He said, "Can we get this signed, please? I'd love to have Murder on the 17th Floor signed here in the office." Uh,
right.
I remember seeing it up there. I'm like, oh my God. Let's go. I didn't
so,
mind. He didn't want me doing updates, so I was like, fuck this guy.
but Dennis, so there's that moment where you audition and you feel that it goes well, but you're like, oh, there's the cast and I'm not in it. But talk a little bit about getting that call from Lorne after you've already not gotten it, and clearly he's got something in mind for you.
Well, I think it played out this way. I think John proved himself so adept at the sketches. And, listen, this will turn it into the Sammy Maudlin show. I don't want to do that. But I do think that periodically they had to put him in prosthetics. And the rock band's first set and the update was a great place to, do the Miss Jane Pittman sort of makeup or whatever that was necessary for some of John's sketch work. So he didn't really have time to do the update. And it sounds like he was at loggerheads with a kid who was in charge of it anyway. I was in Baltimore, I remember, and USA Today announced the cast, and I wasn't in it, obviously. But I was pretty steely back then when I was young. I look at it now and I imagine, I think, where did I get that spine? But back then, I just remember thinking, "Fine, I'll work harder." That was a drawing to an inside straight, trying to get SNL when you don't do characters. But I was on Letterman, and I was doing a Letterman shot, carrying on business as usual. And they said, "Lorne Michaels would like to see you up on 17." And I remember thinking, well, this must be Lorne's. I mean, as I said earlier, he must have been orgasmic about that kid writing that tome. Lorne also doesn't like confrontation, so he wasn't going to call me in to try to massage this or go over it or explain his reasoning. I thought I must be in there with a shot for something. I waited for around 2 hours outside his office. I remember going into his office, and the Empire State Building is over his shoulder. You remember, John, he had those he had the quarter glasses on, and he's sitting behind that green reading light, and over his shoulder you see the Empire State Building, and he looks up for a millisecond. He goes, "Hey, Dennis, you want to be the Weekend Update guy?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Well, I'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So that's when I found out that things had gone my way.
Well, we hadn't even done the first show yet, so it wasn't. I mean, he said about time for sketches, but I just think, whatever. He just thought it'd be better for Dennis to do it.
Yeah, no, but I think that obviously,
and I have a lot to do. I was like working my ass off.
Right. I think it was just like, let's not have that guy. Let's not. You were carrying the show. Is that what you said, John?
I mean, Dennis was very convivial, but I felt like I needed a little boost. So I said, "Can I do my liar character on update? I think it will help Dennis in his career."
Well,
I never told him that, but that's why I did.
That's when I first realized how, I don't know, John's brilliant sketch player to me. Brilliant. One of the best. And I didn't quite get the liar at the beginning, but...
remember when I said his name? Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, you said it.
I'm getting less prone to singing your praises here because you won't shut up, you fucking magpie.
Right.
John, at dress rehearsal, I introduced him as the head of Pathological Liars Anonymous, Tommy Flanagan, and because that's how it's spelled. And afterwards, and it did well at dress. Obviously, it made it to the air. But I remember John saying to me in between dress and air, he said, "Hey, it's Flanagan," and he's like, "Don't you see that he can't even be on the up and up about something as cut and dry as the surname Flanagan. He has to say Flanagan." And boy, I got like those goosebumps you get when you think, now there is a hip, funny insight that unlocked that whole character to me. I don't think the country needed that. It became our biggest thing right away. But to say his name was Tommy Flanagan, I thought, okay, this guy knows what he's doing.
And obviously, John, that was one of the things that stood out from that cast was The Liar. And I know Master Thespian started that year. And it's kind of an interesting...
My son on the left.
Yeah, that's Jon Lovitz Jr. on the left. Yeah, looking very, very, very spry there in that photo. But
it's
yeah,
39 years ago now.
Yeah, right,
Wow.
Exactly.
And when I look at that, it seems like 29 years ago.
So obviously, you have Madonna host the first show, but Dennis, one of the things I've never actually asked you was approaching Update. Obviously, even at that point, 10 years into the show, people still thought of Chevy, even though he only did it for a year. Did you think about it in any way? I mean, the guys before you were Christopher Guest, who people don't even think of doing the news on SNL, but he did it for a year. Brett Hall did it for a few years. Julie Louis-Dreyfus' husband. So, it had been a while since it was even called Weekend Update. Was there anything that you thought about going into it? Well, this is how I'm going to, try to hang it all out there.
Well, I was going to play Dennis Miller and not a newscaster. For better or for worse, I just remember thinking, bring your attitude to it. Chevy was perfect as the fumbling bum. When you think about it, it's almost a precursor to Ron Burgundy or something, that sort of Anchorman character. I just remember thinking, I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to be a bit of a smart ass. I'm not going to take it too seriously. I always liked Carson's ability to extricate himself from a bad bit by a wink and a nod and letting them know that he knew he was in the weeds. And I remember thinking, have a rock and roll feel to it. So, and I also, after a couple of weeks, remember thinking, stay out of the sketches. You're always going to be the fourth lead. Warm the crowd up before the show doing stand-up, and then the first time they see you, I wanted to come out like Larry Mahan in a rodeo, where they open the gate and you're on the Brahma Bull, play some rock and roll music, do my 10 minutes, and then stay out of it. So I wasn't, it didn't dissipate me by being the guy who would bring the gin and tonic to the table in a sketch at 10 to 1. So I just remember stay out of it, man.
Yeah, I mean that's always a fun thing in the when you see the reruns that wherever they end up is oh my God, look, Dennis is in a sketch, and usually you were a waiter almost all the time, right?
Yeah, a couple good ones that I was in. I got to play Harry in the great sketch where we beat John up, and It's a Wonderful Life, and I got to be in that sketch where we were at a nudist colony, and they cut us off.
Sketch.
Yeah, with Matthew Broderick, where I think you guys get to say penis like, I don't know, 100 times because it was like right when it was like, no, that word's okay on late night. So it's
I asked Robert Smythe, because I actually talked about that sketch in my act, and I said, is that why you wrote it, because you could finally say it? He goes, no. But the idea, I go, oh, I thought that's what it was. But he said the idea was like, it's these four straight guys and they're nude and they're straight and it's awkward. So they're trying to make it not awkward, just talking about them being naked over and over. And that was the sketch. And Time Magazine wrote an article about it. Go, this is disgusting. SNL's hit a new low. They said the word penis 47 times. What was the point of that? And I go, yeah, well, that was the point. I go, and how about the point that you sat there and counted it out, you perv?
I think the point of the sketch was so that Nealon could come in and go, Bob, nice penis. So it was...
I remember
Whitney Brown walked by. We go, hey, Whitney, or Bill. It was Bill. Whitney, good to see you. Good to see you. And then I go, boy, has he let his penis go.
What were you going to say,
I remember
Dennis?
in dress rehearsal, John got an erection, and Lauren's note was too much.
So you're talking about the press.
It went off camera.
Obviously, the show is about to start its 50th season, and so that means probably at least, 200 articles written Saturday Night Dead. But obviously, that first year you guys are on has some really mixed reactions to it. I think it's a very talented cast, but maybe not necessarily the best.
Well, look at the people in the photo. You got Robert Downey Jr., he was 20. Then Anthony Michael Hall was 17. Then Dennis. Joan Cusack. You know, now Robert's an Oscar winner. And then Joan's nominated. Then Damon Wayans is huge. And then you see next to Damon is Penn of Penn and Teller. And then Randy Quaid was an established great actor. And Madonna and Terry Sweeney was great. And behind his head is Nora. And then Denitra Vance sadly passed away. She was great. And then me, I mean, the talent, I mean, it's crazy.
Until you said it, I had no idea that Nora was back there. Now I see her arm. Yeah, she's right behind Terry. And look, I mean, it's you know, the idea. You know, people will say that you know, when did TV get so progressive or woke? But I mean, this is the first, I believe, the first openly gay performer on any series as a regular, and the first black woman on SNL. Yeah, so Terry and Denitra Vance. So it's, you know, it's obviously a very eclectic mix, and I think that you know, a lot of people, there's sketches that they remember fondly. Some of it's a little weird. Dennis, I remember you telling me once, I don't even know if you remember because it was so long ago, but you know, Robert Downey Jr. doing something where he's like a suitcase guy and he's like trying to fold himself up. Just obviously really random stuff that you wouldn't even see in the reruns now. You know, those 90-minute shows get cut down to an hour. And I don't know if either of you remember anything that was like, oh, this is great, but people at home are going to hate it, whether it's this year or any other.
Well, Robert was indefatigable even then. Do you remember that character, John? Didn't he do a guy named Suitcase Man where they carried him out on stage?
The character Spine Boy. It was a kid who had no spine. He used to come up to me. He goes, "Hey, I'd write these poems. You want to hear one?" I go, "Yeah." And he would do it. And he goes, "What do you think?" I go, "You're a genius. I've never heard any language like that." I mean, he was brilliant. I mean, they were all great. The problem was, I remember the 11th, we'd done 11 shows and a review came out, you know, Saturday Night Dead and TV Guide, and they reviewed the first 3 shows. And by then the cast was gelling pretty good. And they ignored the fact that by then my Lara character, everybody was imitating it. It was huge. And the Dennis was great on Update. And I mean, it was an unfair review, I thought. And the next year, you know, they kept Dennis and Nora and I. And I felt really weird, like, where are those other people? You know, it was.
Well, we have a comment in the chat from the great. Sorry, John. My friend Eric is saying, you know, so glad Lauren saved you from the fire, John, at the end of that season. And, you know, there is sort of that infamous sketch where the building's on fire. And
I remember.
Yeah, well, it's for the audience, John.
Well, what happened was the show is so slammed in the press that they said, let's just go after ourselves. So they wrote that sketch where it was Angelica Houston was the host, and Billy Martin was like the Yankees manager, was like a featured guest on the show. So the sketch was Billy was mad that he wasn't in the show more, so he sets fire to the studio. So then,
by the way, that tracks. That sounds like something Billy would do.
Listen, let me tell you, I remember hanging with Billy Martin there. And they always said he was angry in this. He was the nicest, quietest, sweetest man. He was so nice. Nothing like what you heard. I'm not saying it was the opposite. He couldn't have been nicer, and Angelica was great. So then they have a scene where it's on fire, and Billy goes, "I'm mad," and it was funny. He's got soot all over his face. It was funny. And then Lauren says to the writers, "Wait for me in the room, right? That's on fire." And then I come in. He goes, "No, John, don't go in. Wait for me in my limo." Okay. And I remember Terry Sweeney that was on a Thursday. He was really upset. I like this sketch, and he was upset. I go, "Terry, there's no fire. It's not real." What do you? So, but then the next day I thought about it. I go, well, what if I was like, you know, they said, go in there, you know, and get ready. So I said to him, I get it. But at the end, the credits roll, and there's a question mark after everybody's name. Who's coming back? I didn't even know if I was coming back. I asked Lauren in the summer, am I coming back? He goes, yes, of course. He goes, well, of course. I go, well, I don't know. You don't say anything. They always kept you like unsure. I had no idea.
Dennis, you've known Lovitz for 40 years now almost. Do you think that he would have taken it well if he had been in the fire in that sketch and been like, oh, okay, I get it, it's funny? Or do you think he would have had his head down and or been livid?
Get it.
You know what? I wouldn't even tell that story about Terry, because guess what? We were all scared kids. John was in, quite frankly, because he had the biggest score during the year and he was great at it. And they needed to pull somebody out for that thing. But when I hear that story, I think back and I think, listen, you dwelled on tenterhooks back then. Eggshells were like linoleum. You never knew when you were going to get whacked from what you thought was the best job up till that moment. So, of course, Terry, like you said, he was breaking boundaries anyway, being on the show.
And he's very
and yeah, of course he was a little nervous. So I'd probably park that story because I thought.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I just remember I said, Terry, I thought about it. I go, what if I was put in the fire? Would I be upset? And I thought, yes. So yeah.
So
but he wasn't just gay. He was very funny.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Yeah, that. You'll still see, in compilations and things, you'll see him as Nancy Reagan. It's and not really something that a lot of people, I think, pulled off well. And obviously, some very funny stuff. So, Dennis, there is that question. I guess Lovitz could have assumed he was safe. When you find out you're coming back, is it close to the start of the season? Are you kind of in limbo for a while there, or do you know during the summer?
You know what? I have pretty good recall on a lot of things, but sometimes early in my career, I'm kind of it doesn't feel like a sword from the stone moment. You probably found out a little earlier than later. I don't think it's a dramatic, call was they tagged me down the hallway to the gas chamber sort of thing. But they didn't tell you right away. And I also remember thinking, I think I've done enough to not get whacked. But if I get whacked, that's showbiz. I would tell anybody who's interested in showbiz that you have to go beyond rhino skin. You have to get rhino skin wearing Kevlar because it is brutal at the beginning. And I wouldn't take anything for granted. When I left the show that night, if you'd asked me, I think I would have tried to be deadly accurate and say, I think I've got a better than 50-50 chance of being back. But if they whack me, guess what? I'll get the next thing.
Yeah, and obviously after that, they bring in sort of, this is the cast that I grew up watching, in middle school because I was a child back then. Obviously, bringing in Hartman and Carvey, Jan Hooks, Victoria Jackson, and then after a little while, I know Nealon started being in some sketches. Obviously, that first season, allegedly, they wanted to cancel it. We did Lorne being Lorne. He's like, "Don't worry, I got this." And I think that the perception, in looking back, is that this cast was accepted, and people thought things, like Church Lady and Phil stuff obviously connected. Was that the reality, or did it take even this cast a little time to find its legs with the press, who of course is just looking for a chance to write another Saturday Night Dead article?
Listen, that cast was that's made of stone killers. You look at who moved on. Randy Quaid is a brilliant actor. Robert Downey Jr. has proven himself to be one of the greatest actors of his generation. I knew that when I watched him in Chaplin. Michael Anthony Hall was a great young actor. Joan Cusack, her work in broadcast news, they all had another take. They could all look at the guy in charge at one point and say, can I get another one for me? And they could. That didn't work. You have to have your cat's paws backed over the abyss on Saturday Night Live, or you're going to get killed. Dana Carvey was a stone killer. Phil Hartman was the greatest of greats at the Groundlings, the glue guy, the Danny Aykroyd who held it all together. Kevin Nealon, another stand-up. You had people there who weren't thinking about, I'll get it right on the next time. You had people who think, I'm going to seize this by the throat and throttle it. And I think the press got off our back pretty quickly because you had people Listen, Carvey could have brought anything to that desk, and I'm telling you, he was going to smash it into America's face and get a big laugh with it. That old man character, I used to tease him about it. And I just remember looking at him and thinking, boy, it was like when Joe Green came to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we had been crap for years, and Joe Green comes in out of North Texas State, and he stands over the center, and then he tilts off at a 45-degree angle and just ear holes the guy. Everybody in Pittsburgh said, we're no longer the Steelers. We just got great in that moment. And when I watched those guys work together the first time, Phil, so seamless, I remember thinking, well, we just got better.
Yeah, right. And obviously, John, you knew Phil, and I assume you guys know this, but Phil's audition, you can find it on YouTube. And towards the end of Phil's audition, John comes up, and you guys do that. That's the Chick Hazard character, right, John?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we both loved old movies, and Phil he was the king of the groundlings, and I'd been there, and I idolized him. You know, he was 9 years older, and he could do anything. But I think the reason that the cast worked that year was everybody had a strictly comedy background, and everyone knew each other somehow. Like Dennis already knew Dana and Kevin. I knew Phil, and I'd worked with Jan on this other show, and Dana actually got Kevin on the show, and then Phil, of course, I worked with. You know, so and everyone and Nora and Dennis I knew from the year before, so we all knew each other, and we all had a comedy background. I didn't know Victoria, but I'm just thinking of a funny story. But the first time, that's like the fifth year, that photo. But I remember the second year we had shot the opening at this restaurant, and Victoria, she's wonderfully sweet and very open, and she's talking. She's had a baby, and then I had an episiotomy, and da. She's talking for about a half hour, and then Dennis is next to her and goes, "So, is this for real, or are you just retarded?"
Gee, all right, John. Well, I think
didn't mean
Victoria.
I mean, meant like, what is wrong with it?
I know what you meant.
But they became very close. The two of them together on Update was magic. I thought they were.
Well,
great.
When Victoria would do the handstand,
We all loved
all that
Victoria.
stuff.
Yeah,
I have a sweet story about Victoria.
John, but you notice John always does stories that initially. Sorry, I have to plug this in. My battery.
No worries.
Dennis,
he does emotional triage where he comes back around and says,
He's
like, we're magic together. Yeah, we were
but
like
everybody was.
William Powell.
Everybody was okay.
Victoria, she would just say anything. We loved her, but she would just say anything. And you're like, she goes, what? I go, what? I go, some things are private, don't you think?
Well,
Victoria, it was, you could tell they loved each other, and it was just, they were
John,
great.
if you can't be open about an episiotomy, what can you be open about?
Dennis, how many times have you told me that? I've known you 20 years.
Not
a month goes by that Dennis doesn't tell me that. I was
Christian back then. Only a woman could have a episiotomy. Today, anyone.
Well, I've got one scheduled right after this.
I didn't have a baby, but I'm booking it anyway.
So I was an NBC Page during the 25th anniversary, and I had, to me, two very sweet interactions. One was with Mary Gross, who was on during the Eddie Murphy years. She played Alfalfa, a bunch of other characters, but that's what I think a lot of people remember as. And I was sitting at a table, and she asked if she could sit at my table because her feet hurt. I'm like, you were on the show. Like, why are you asking? She was just so sweet and human. And Victoria, I helped, I escorted her up in the elevator, and she's like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to throw up. I'm like, why? She's like, I'm so nervous to be here, So it was sort of very sweet. These people that just are like, I can't believe I was a part of this thing even so long ago. And I met Dennis that day, and you were a hail fellow, well met. In fact, I dare say, Dennis, you were very convivial.
Hey, Christian, wasn't the girl who's a big star now from White Lotus? Wasn't she a Page? I'm blanking on her name.
There's a few. So the actress Aubrey Plaza was
Right.
So that's what we're talking about. She was an NBC Page years after I was, but So I think that she and I went on slightly different career trajectories, but there's still time for me. White Lotus season 3, Dennis, look for me in it. So obviously, you know, the show, people tune in because they love the cast, but you know, there's sort of this interesting perception by the people watching at home that, you know, some of the hosts, it's like, yeah, but a lot of people think Steve Martin was a cast member. And it seemed like Tom Hanks would do the show every year. And I know, obviously, you both know him quite well, but talk about first getting to kind of know him, and he comes into that environment and it's like, oh, this guy's great in movies, but obviously not everybody great in movies is able to have like have recurring sketches. You know, he had Mr. Short-Term Memory. Johnny had the guy with you, the hello and goodbye. That's the, yeah.
Well, I remember he came in on the first year of the 5th show, and I met him and he said, "Oh, I think you know my girlfriend." I said, "Who's your girlfriend?" He goes, "Rita Wilson." I went, "Oh, of course." And I knew Rita. She was friends with this woman, Robin Schiff, who wrote Romeo and Michelle's Adventure. So she's come around the groundlings. And I remember Rita saying, "I'm going to go do this movie with Tom Hanks and John Candy called Volunteers and stuff." And she didn't know them then. Then they end up, you know, getting married. So anyway, and then we went to we went to this a Chinese restaurant to get lunch, you know. And then years later, he goes, "Yeah, I can't do that anymore." He always remembers it though, and we became very close friends. And but I remember thinking, God, this guy's so good, he could be a cast member, like, because he could do anything. And I think one of the best things he did was when I played Dukakis and Dana was George Bush, and we had the debate, and Tom played Peter Jennings.
Oh,
it was just everybody in that sketch, and it was great, hilarious. And Kevin was Sam Donaldson, he was hilarious, and Jen Hooks was Diane Sawyer, and she's just like flirt with the way she played it was hysterical. She's like, "Huh? Well, I have a question." It was hilarious.
So, Dennis, as somebody who didn't get to really usually be in the sketches, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, you did get to do one thing with Hanks on the show, which was when Carvey came out as you on Update, and then Hanks came out as a third you, and you guys sang a Christmas Carol together. You know, obviously you knew him, but I don't think you got to do a lot on the show with Hanks.
You know, the thing I remember about Tom is before he even started, and he was a movie star at that point, but, you know, the old show where he played in drag, you know, was Some Like It Hot on TV. I remember watching that before I knew his name and thinking, wow, this guy. I'd never met a guy that fearless and not in an arrogant way. You know, there's been great improv artists in the history of the world. I'm reading a book about Elaine May now, and Mike Nichols, obviously, probably the best. I thought Rick Overton was an amazing guy. You know, Robin could think on his feet. But I'd have to say the most fearless, and like I said, and not in a classic Second City Del Close improv way, but just a guy who would step out and with nothing and never. If you had something on his pulse, it wouldn't go up a bit. It was Hanks, and he was perfectly suited for that show. Obviously, he could have been one of the all-time greats there. But I remember him in that stand-up movie years ago. You know, he was
Punchline, yeah,
too. Yeah, he's just he's a natural. He has no fear and a lot of heart, and that's an intoxicating brew for the American public.
Punchline's a movie that I'll use as an example about just the way Hollywood is, because that movie came out in 1987 and Sally Field played his girlfriend. And then 7 years later in Forrest Gump, she plays his mother. So, you know, that's just the way that it's like, well, you've aged out of a girlfriend mode, Flying Nun. But, you know, just kind of
look at that. I look at that as she got hired for two great parts.
Oh, you know, absolutely. Totally.
All this misassumption that show business is going to right all wrongs. It's a force multiplier. Showbiz takes whatever ails you and puts it into hyperspace. It's like when the stars blur with Chewbacca and Harrison Ford. So I'm sure Sally must look back and think 2 great parts within 7 years and 2 Oscars. So
we're not even talking about Smokey and the Bandit. So yeah, obviously she's got plenty to.
I would like. There was a sketch though, because Dennis, he goes, I want to be more sketches. I go, you got to hang out. So, but he was like, you can tell the story, Dennis. But he wrote this sketch, and he's kind of like, I'll just write the most ridiculous sketch ever, and then they did it. He was like,
well, I don't remember. I really don't remember. I'm not trying to be precious, ever wanting to be in too many sketches, but I do remember saying to Dana one day, you know what? That 10 to 1 hour is such it's what do they call it now? 4-wall theater or a box theater in Manhattan where they get up and do experimental stuff.
A black box theater where all the walls are black. Yeah.
I said, I bet you I can get something ridiculous on at 10 to 1 if we act like it matters. Or there's a frisson there where you have to cut the difference between thinking it matters and it doesn't matter at all. And if you hit that sweet spot, you can get something weird on. And I wrote a sketch about 3 French clowns searching for water with divining rods called Coco, Michou, and LeBay. And it was just so weird that it got on at 10 to 1, and then it did a second one. But that was more or less not an active search for me to come out with a Coco, Michou, and LeBay line of bobbleheads.
No.
Rather, some in-house bet with Carvey that I thought I could get something really weird on if we made it weird enough.
But if
it was also, I remember it was kind of making fun of the show itself and sketchy. It was hilarious because it was kind of an inside. I mean, one time Dana wrote a sketch and there was no chance it was going to be on the show, and so it was called Funny Little Poopy Head. The whole point of it was because Warren would read all the stage directions of the sketches. So the whole point of the sketch was to make Lauren say Funny Little Poopy Head like over and over.
Yeah.
And it's like, Funny Little Poopy Head goes in the show. Funny Little Poopy Head. And I'm like crying because I knew that he did it.
These days on his show, Seth Meyers occasionally will do something called Second Chance Theater, where he'll have on people who were on SNL when he was, and they'll do sketches that died in dress or maybe never made it. Are there any? And I know it's been a long time since you guys were on, but are there any that still stick with you? Of like, I don't know why this didn't work. I would have loved to have seen it get a shot, on the air. If any come to mind, because obviously the dress rehearsals being important, but once Jonathan Groff, the then head writer of Conan, said that sometimes we have to take into consideration that just because 198 tourists didn't think something was funny doesn't mean it's not funny. So was there anything in your Rolodex, just thinking back of like, I don't know why this never even got on the show for people to decide? John, I would assume for you, it's a sketch that you were in. That
there was 2 of them, but I mean, as far as look at the show, there was kind of, to me, an extreme arrogance of the writers where you do have dress rehearsal and there'd be a sketch and 350 random people are watching it. Most of them are watching it on TV monitors because they can't see it because the way the stage is set up, and the thing would just be silent. And then Jim Downey, who I love, goes, "Oh, they'll get it at home." I go, so then they would put it on the show, silence, But there was one. That's why I don't agree with that. But there was one. No, I had 2. One was Conan made fun of it. I wasn't trying to get a catchphrase, but all my characters were arrogant idiots, which I'm sure you mean you. So anyway, so I did a sketch where it was the richest man in the world, Mr. Canby, but he was just an idiot. And then I go, well, goodbye. I'm going off on safari. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. And then I come back. What do we do while you're gone? I go, I don't know. Bye, Kit Kat. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. So then I'd leave. And then Phil Hartman was like, can you believe we work for this idiot? And he goes, yeah, bye, Kit Kat. And Whitney's like, I know. What a moron. Then the phone rings and Phil's like, hello? What? Oh, you're kidding. What? Kit Kat just went up 300 million. So then we come back. Hello, everybody. I forgot my wallet. And he goes, Mr. Camby, Kit Kat just went up $300 million. I go, well, you see, buy what you love and you can't go wrong. Well, goodbye, everybody, goodbye. So anyway, you can't just say goodbye, everybody, goodbye. And then the next year, there's Spade doing his character on the airline. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. I'm like, oh, hello. And then there was another one I wrote called Oh My God. Charlton Heston in every movie at some point, he'd go, oh my God. I wrote a sketch. Actually, I did at the Groundlings with Tim Stack about two guys in World War II, how they end up in the front line. They tell the story. And then first time I did it with Phil, and I tell this whole story. They go, how did I end up in the war? Grimsby, and I tell the story. And then he goes, and then I ended it, and I go, now I'm here. Oh my God. And then Phil goes, who are you talking to? I go, Grimsby. He goes, Grimsby's dead. And I go, what? Oh my God. He doesn't even have a head. This guy's just nuts. And that one I tried to do forever, and I was like, that'll never be on. And I kept resetting. I was so mad for resubmitting it.
Ironically, those are the two that I would have picked also.
Well, I'm glad that those are the ones you would have picked, Dennis. Obviously,
Yes.
you got a lot of the characters sitting next to you. You're talking about, Carvey coming in with the grumpy old man and you telling him it was going to eat shit, which, then sort of propels him to put even more into it.
Originally, grumpy old man was Dana and I together the first time. And then he did it again by himself. I'm like, hello?
Oh, well, it's funny because I was about to say that sketch only got better over time, John. And now I know why.
So wait let me get this straight. Spade nicked the stewardess guy and
No, I didn't say no, David. I'm not.
Man.
No. I didn't say David didn't take it. I'm just saying he did it. Someone else wrote that sketch. I asked him. Someone else wrote it, but I was like, oh, because Warren said you can't just keep saying goodbye, everybody, goodbye over and over. I go, but it wasn't just that. It was the rich guy was just an idiot. It was funny. I ended up sticking the phrase, and I did this character, Tales of Ribaldry. Hello, I'm Evelyn Quince, and welcome to Tales of Ribaldry. And then at the end, I go, well, join us next week. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. I just stuck it in. I was so mad. And the whole control room cheered. It gave Dennis diarrhea. He was so nervous.
Well, obviously, how's that not going to happen on a show night? It's always what I was going to say, Dennis.
Sorry, John, I got a crick in my neck from forcing a smile about enjoying that story. Anyway.
So obviously, you sit there and people come on, John doing Tommy Flanagan the first time, and you have, all the newer cast members would be trying things out on updates sometimes. And, so there's, Sandler would have his sort of, weird esoteric thing that has worked out fairly well for him. Did you ever feel like, oh, the crowd loves it? You don't even have to say what character. You're just like, wow, it's getting laughs, but I still don't get it.
No, you know what? I was a good employee. I felt very lucky to have that desk. I always thought, you're not even co-anchoring this, for God's sakes. Be a good soldier. Try to serve whoever's sitting next to you. I think the only time I didn't quite understand anything, it might have been due to an awkward handoff between the older regime and the newer regime, in that Don Novella, who I remember as a good guy, he did Father Guido Sarducci, and sometimes that thing needed a slow rollout, and sometimes you had like 10 minutes and 7 minutes of it was that. I remember early on thinking, I think the pace we're doing this at, that needs to be a little shorter. But even then, I think I zipped it and said, hey, it's not your show. Just shut up and serve the anchor desk. Try to score a couple times. But by and large, whenever anybody sat down there, I was trying to. As I see with clips of Seth and Colin Jost, you're Henry Higgins, man. It's Ascot. Try to show them off.
Yeah, no, exactly, and obviously,
we all became really good friends, because it's very intense, and so Dennis still is one of my best friends. We love each other, So anyway, became very close friends. So sometimes,
text him after this and make sure that's the case.
so I just remember, Dennis, I remember this, but it was very funny. And he makes fun of me, and it's funny to me. But anyway, I was doing Annoying Man, and so they go, and then Dennis goes, "Thanks, Annoying Man." He goes, I don't know where Annoying Man Jon Lovitz ends and Annoying Man starts. So I licked his cheek. I licked him. I went in. I licked his cheek, and then he was laughing, but I was really laughing because he didn't know there was a big chocolate mark on the side of his face.
But before we start to wind things down, you mentioned Conan in passing. Obviously, the writing staff that was in and out of there while you guys were there. Obviously, it has people. You talked about Smigel, Bob Odenkirk, who I don't know that I think him going on and doing Mr. Show is like, yeah, that makes sense. Him becoming this multi-nominated dramatic actor is fascinating to somebody like me. Greg Daniels, who does the American version of The Office, and I think also King of the Hill. So, Dennis, did you have much collaboration with the writers, or was it just like, were they handing in update jokes at all? Or because later on, when I was an intern, the writers all had to so like when Colin Quinn was the anchor, I guess the writers all had to turn in like 10. Was it set up in that way at all, or were you really on your own island, Dennis?
Well, I was with Herb, who was my Yoda. We might as well have been in the swamp together. Herb Sargent was the coolest, a genius comedically, the mellowest, the hippest New Yorker. I felt like I was in some ad about what becomes a legend most or something. So Herb and I would do most of the news. The first couple of weeks I was there, people turned jokes in, but I was a pretty good joke writer, and Herb was a brilliant joke writer. And the two of us would go in his office on Fridays at around 4:00, and Herb had used an X-Acto knife to cut out, like Jay would hold up weird news stories. He'd have 100 of those on his desk and just hold them up, and we'd do a flashcard thing on it. I do remember that anybody could turn in a joke, but we had other fish to fry that first year at SNL. Weekend Update was doing okay, so they were trying to plug a lot of gaps in the dam. But I do remember years later, there was an intern who would turn in funny jokes. He was the receptionist at the front desk, Spike.
He gave it to me, and I gave him to Dennis. He goes, "Can you give these to Dennis or to Herb? They're really good jokes." And I gave him to Herb, and Herb goes, "Yeah, I like him." And Dennis was Steve Coren.
Well, I think Dennis is talking about Spike Firestein. Steve Coren went on to do, I think, the Soup Nazi episode of Seinfeld.
No, but I remember Steve asking me, "Hey, I wrote some update jokes. Can you give them to Dennis?" Or I think it was Dennis, and I gave him to Dennis, and he goes, "Oh, these are good."
So Dennis, was Spike just handing you jokes, or how was the handoff with Spike working?
Well, listen. The guy who wrote the Soup Nazi episode, I don't know who Steve Coren is, but it's Spike Firestein.
Okay, I'm getting my stories confused. Steve Coren did become a Seinfeld writer.
It was both of them.
Okay, so that's my mistake. But he was a Seinfeld writer. But yeah, you're right. Spike Firestein must have written that. I'll always say nice things about Colin Quinn, who when he took over Update when I was there as an intern, and I started submitting jokes, and he would talk to me in the elevator, like, every week he would tell me, like, these are what we need jokes for. Do you got anything? He was very encouraging, and he knew my name because the submissions like had your name at the top of it. So I appreciated, he didn't have to even look twice at me, and maybe some people in that cast didn't, but that's all right. That's a story for another show. So, the idea that, I wrote this joke and it's on the show, obviously, Spike Firestein going. Yeah.
Well, Colin's a mensch. I would say this about Saturday Night Live. While it was a wicked gladiator camp in many ways, I think, and like I said, maybe I'm, as I get older, I reflect more on the good side of things. I think mostly everybody I met there, and there's a couple pricks, but where isn't that in the world? And I don't even mean cast. I just mean some hosts, who seemed a little standoffish and that. But by and large, I remember it being a great group of people. I remember we had Kenny Among and Audrey Dickman and Lorne and Herb and the cast members. It was a great group of people, and we were all pulling on a very the drummer was quick in the galley ship that day because we were pulling our ass off on those oars to get it out every week. But I look back on it, I just feel blessed. I think I can't believe I ever ended up on SNL, and I can't believe that I had 6 years there. I look back and think it seems like a fairy tale, but very blessed and thankful.
Did you go into that last year, that 6th year, going like, okay, this is probably going to be it, or is it just something that you started to feel as it went along, or was it not that calculated to just decide, all right, it's time to move on?
Well, I know because of Daryl Hammond and Kevin and some other people, the timeline stretched out. But at that point, it was around 6 years, and I do remember I was looking to get a good deal somewhere. I don't want to sound like an avaricious creature, but I wasn't going to do many movies, and I just remember thinking I should look for an opportunity to cash out. Sounds too bland, but you have to look for the next thing. So I just remember thinking I might keep my ears pricked up here for the next thing. And I do remember, here's the essence of SNL on my last show. I said to Lauren, Lauren, due to the nature of my job, I've never said live from New York, it's Saturday night. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, would you like to for the last show? And I said, sure, and I'd love to. So it's a thing about me and Lauren standing at the craft service table. He says, last show, huh? And I go, yeah. And he said, we recreate the conversation. I said, I always wanted to say live from New York, it's Saturday night. And then he goes, oh, well, go ahead. And I turned to the camera and I go, live from New York, it's Saturday night. And then they hold on the shot and Lauren says, you good? And I said, yeah. And he looks at the camera and says, live from New York. It's Saturday night. And that is the distilled core of Saturday Night Live is, in the moment and then taking it down a peg.
Yeah, well, you're just lucky that he didn't have Julia Sweeney and Pat Getup just tackle you and push you out of the way before you could say it. So it's John. I know that I've talked to you enough about
when Dennis left. I remember that show, and this was not Dennis at all. But they called me. Brad Graves, our manager, goes, "Oh, there's going to be a joke on the show tonight." Lauren said they just so they know they love you, right? I go, well, what are they going to say? He goes, I don't know, but it's just a joke. I go, all right. Well, they kept inviting me back. I'd left the 5th year, and they kept inviting me back. The 6th year, every time I was in New York, can you come on the show? So I kept coming on. So there's Dennis going, well, you're going to leave. Dennis goes, you leave. Lauren goes, you're really leaving? Yeah. And he goes, then Lauren goes, you're not going to keep coming back like Lovitz, are you? It's pathetic. And I'm like,
well, yes, I would say that's why they had you get the heads up. It's like we're going to make a joke about you.
Yeah, but it didn't get a laugh.
Well, that's the moral
of
that story.
They eat their own. It was just silent, no laughs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, a year after Dennis left, they had Carvey doing the Cooking with Dennis Miller. So obviously,
yeah, that was also kind of low. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's just the nature of the show. I like that you both look back on the time fondly, and obviously,
yeah, like Dennis, I feel lucky I was on. The whole time I was on the show, I couldn't even say. They go, "What are you doing?" Oh, I'm on Saturday Night Live. I couldn't say it. The day I left, then right after I left, I go, "Oh, I was on Saturday Night Live." I still can't believe I was on it. Same.
Yeah, and I mean, there's all the Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Well, he probably doesn't remember this, but he used to come into my office all the time, crying, "Help me, help me, help me." All right, here's what we're gonna do. He probably has no memory of that, did you?
Probably not, but obviously all the on-camera stuff. But I know, Dennis, you've talked about just like hanging out with Bowie or being at things. You're at an event and oh look, there's multiple Beatles here. Just stuff like that. That's probably harder to grab onto than like, oh, I'm in a TV studio, I'm getting laughs, I'm doing a job. I would assume that a young kid with a dream out of Pittsburgh. Some of that must have been a little surreal at first. Just some of those interactions of like,
Well, people like comedians. People like comedians. It's listen, if anybody's ever seen my wife, you know how far a sense of humor can take you, because I'm in way over my. What do they say? I outkicked my coverage. SNL was a meeting place for every. Due to Lorne, you know, Lorne's a great. Has a great sense of salon, probably unmatched, you know, and he knew everybody. Everybody would saunter through that place. Occasionally, he'd brush up against them, and you remembered that there's a lot of rockers who dig comedians. You know what I mean? It's just funny that way. Now, earlier you were talking about Tim Stack, John. Believe it or not, I am due at the golf course to play 9 holes with Mr. Tim Stack. So do you have anything you want me to tell him when I run into him? What was the sketch again, so I can surprise him and bring it up?
Oh, there was he was. I got in the groundlings. He had already done it, and he put me into it. He added me. It was just the 2 guys in the front line. How'd I end up in the war, in World War II? I forget the name, but he'll remember.
When I shank my drive on one, I'm going to look over at him and go, "Oh my God!"
Yeah.
Well, Dennis,
what Christian you said, and Dennis remembers. So our first year, one time Lauren goes, or Jerry Hall hosted Mick Jagger's girlfriend. He goes, "Go explain to Mick how you do the liar." And I'm on the 17th. I go down to the studio and I'm talking to him, and I this is just surreal. This is an inside joke between a friend of mine. Now I'm telling Mick Jagger about this joke I did. Anyway, and a year later, we get a call. Jerry Hall called. She wanted to invite you, Dennis, and Nora to their house. And so a year and a half later, so we go, "Where's Nora?" "I don't know." So Dennis, we go, let's go. So we go over there. And we're talking. We're in Mick Jagger's living room, and he goes, "Oh, I've got a new album. Want to hear it?" And I'm like, "Jerry, show me around." But they were sitting on the couch across, and above their head was a mirror. And I remember Dennis and I looking at each other, going. And I went outside. I go, "Hey, Dennis, remember when we looked at each other in the mirror?" I go, "Were you thinking what I was thinking?" He goes, "Yeah. Like a year and a half ago, we're dead broke, and now we're in Mick Jagger's living room."
I remember the guy on the couch next to us was Sid Bass. You know it was like an eclectic crew. You and I are sitting there in for members only jackets, and I remember Sid Bass was turned out in some sort of, tuxedo, and it was a surreal thing. Hang on to your hat when you get it, and we did, and everybody got out for the most part unscarred.
Well, Dennis, I'm going to let you go in a minute.
Boys. Christian, I'm proud of you, buddy. 600 episodes.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. And everybody always asks how you doing. And I always say that I'll see you a few times a year. And I got this tweet wanting to know, is Skeeter still good? And I said my understanding was that Skeeter was indeed good. And we've got about 1,300 people watching us live, which we appreciate. Thank you, Dennis. And
I love you, John. I'll talk to you soon.
Love you, Dennis. Okay. Tell Tim hi.
All right. Well, thank you to the great Dennis Miller. We appreciate him being on with us. Now the show can begin for real, John.
Let the show begin.
We did get some people in the chat. Principled Uncertain, he says, "I love Dennis and John, but now that Dennis is gone, we'll just says, I love John." And we did get some super chats. The Quad Father saying, "Amazing cast assembled, Blatt. I can't say enough about how great all of you are." But again, Dennis is gone, so I guess the Quad is only talking to us. Thanks for all the years of entertainment, guys. Here's one from Ireland. My friend Adam Hughesy, the H-Man Hughes, wants to know, John, I don't know if either of you have won acting awards, but I was wondering if either of you have an Oscar hanging between your legs. He specifies, how big are your pieces? John, I think you're never one to shy away from this question.
No. I don't know, honestly, if I'm big down there or not. I do know I was standing next to a horse the other day, completely nude, and the horse said, "Damn." So there's that.
This one in the chat, Lovitz wanted to know if you're at a Chili's. No, it's a Chili's to go, one of the ones in the airport. I'll read through some more. Oh, I should have told Dennis this while he was still on. I didn't know he had a tea time. They want Christian and Dennis to bring back their podcast. Well, John, we have more than 1,300 people watching. Dennis doesn't really do much on social media, but you're still out there. And let people know where they can find you, and keep tabs on all things in the Lovitz verse.
Well, I'm on Twitter at Real Jon Lovitz, and then on Instagram it's John Jwin lower slash Lovitz.
Yeah,
and that's where I am.
Right, exactly. Yes, John _Lovitz on Instagram. I just
underscore.
Yes, that's all right. And
down low.
And Mr. Blue Sky, amazing guest. This is awesome. We appreciate that. John, you recently, obviously, people always remember you as a great, but I appreciated the fact that you were able to remind everyone how great you are recently when George Santos was in the news. All of a sudden, it's like, well, there's only one person we can call for thoughts on George Santos, and that would, of course, be Tommy Flanagan. I think you were on Howard, and you were also on with Fallon, right?
Right, on the Tonight Show. And now that I think of it, I should have just done my liar character as him when I was on the Tonight Show. I thought about it, I go, what was I thinking? It's like, well, how am I going to play it? Because I'm thinking I got to try to imitate him somehow or whatever. And the funniest thing, though, after I did on the Tonight Show, and they'd also done it on Saturday Night Live and somewhere else, I think on Jimmy Kimmel, and George Santos tweeted about it. And these guys need to step up their game. And, Jon Lovitz is a legend, but he was horrible, and I'm like, well, coming from you, it's a compliment. But the funny thing is the guy it was all about how he lies. It was nothing about him copying to the fact that he's just a pathological liar. He was just more upset about the way he was portrayed, but not the fact that everyone said he's just a balls out liar.
Yeah, he's like, that part.
And that's, he's.
Yeah, he felt like that part was the given, John.
No, he never said he lied. He would never admit it.
Talking about the fact that you were on Howard as that, did you obviously the studio that Howard was in isn't as close as it is now. Like now, Sirius is at 30 Rock, so a lot of the current cast members kind of duck in there. Some of the hosts. Was that a show that you did regularly, the Howard Stern show, while you were still in New York, or even after the fact?
No, he actually, when I was on SNL, he used to make fun of me all the time on his show.
Oh.
He goes, you should go on, and then he'll stop. I go, not him. I don't know the guy anything. But actually, then years later, I met him at a gym. We talked about it, and he was very different than he is on air. Back then, anyway. Back then, he was very, he'd say anything and go after you and say anything. And then in person, he was really humble and shy and extremely nice. And then he asked me to go on then. I said, yeah, but you're going to ask me about this and this. And I can't talk. He goes, yeah, you're right. I would. I go, yeah, I can.
Did you ever?
I was glad to go on that. They had an idea for me to do that sketch. So he's in New York. I was in Los Angeles. I had to get up at 4:30.
Oh.
It was on 6 because New York's 3 hours ahead.
Sure, yeah. Oh.
And,
did you ever get accosted at an event by Stuttering John Melendez? Where he would ask people goofy questions.
Well, I can tell you a story about. No, I knew him. He was a nice guy, but I did the movie A League of Their Own, so they had the premiere in New York, right? And then afterward, they had a big, an after party and dinner at a Tavern in the Green, which was a big famous restaurant in Central Park. So I was at a table and I was sitting with next to Regis Philbin, and I think Robert De Niro was there. So Regis Philbin, who I'd met him a bunch before, but anyway, he was a very nice man and really funny. So he goes, John, you're great in the movie. You're a big star now. Look, John, there's Robert De Niro. Don't look, I'll look for you. You're a big star. It was just being really funny. I'm crying out. Anyway, so about after half an hour, Regis leaves, and I see Stuttering John walk up to Regis and ask him something. They go, and also Regis goes, God damn it, get the fuck away from me, God damn it. He just exploded in anger, right? So I'm like, what happened? So I went up to Stuttering John. I go, what did you say to him? What did you ask him? He goes, I asked him if he had a big penis.
It's something that a man should be proud of. But also Regis as a New York guy and somebody that, Howard used to goof on not just Regis, but also Kathy Lee so much that probably anytime that Regis went anywhere, they're Stuttering John with a microphone, So he's like, get the fuck away from me at this point. So.
But I was crying. It was very funny.
Do you keep tabs on SNL at all? Do you watch it every once in a while? If something,
I still watch it. Mostly, I watch. If I'm at home, I watch. Usually, I'm doing from Saturday I'm working, but otherwise, I'll watch it and stuff.
Well, I've lived out in LA for 20 years, and at some point in the last 8 years, they started airing it at 8:30 our time when it's live in New York. I'm like, Yeah. I'm like, now I can watch it again. I couldn't stay up till 1 a.m. Not with.
Well, they used to only watch it at 11:30, and then if there's anything, the censors say cut this or cut this.
Yeah.
And then would air it, across the country in their time zone at 11:30. And I remember my very first show, and it was I was so nervous. I go, oh God, the whole country's watching this, and I go, oh no. It's 3 hours later in California. Okay, that cuts out 10 million. But now it's literally airing across the entire nation at the same time. So they can't do anything. So if there's mistakes or errors, then that's it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for the rebroadcast, sometimes they'll drop out the audio or they'll switch out the dress rehearsal version for the sketch. The actress Jenny Slate, who was only on for 1 year, she's gone on to pretty good, decent, good acclaim, good success, and she said "fuck" on the air in her first show. It just slipped out, and obviously most of the country didn't see that, but you have the live audience. And you have guys like Charles Rocket swore on the air. But did you ever come close? Did you ever almost get one out? Not intentionally, I mean.
Not intentionally. Yeah, I said shit.
Oh.
But it was Francis Ford Coppola was George Wendt was the host, and it goes directed by Francis Ford Coppola, right? So there was a war scene. And so we're in the ditch shooting, and I'm getting really into it. I'm shooting, and I go, and I'm bullet came like shit, and because I was so into it, I didn't mean to, but I knew Charles Rocket. It was tragic. He was a very nice guy, and I asked him about that incident, and he said I didn't know because he goes I didn't know we were back on because after the last sketch, everybody they go come onto the stage and say your good nights and bow, She goes, so I was up there, and someone goes, wait, and he goes, I was just talking to somebody, going, who the fuck who killed him, And he goes, I didn't realize we were on. He didn't do it on purpose, He was a very nice guy.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of people know him as a, character actor. He's sort of, there was this stretch in the 80s where
they have a 7-second delay. Yeah. So,
yeah, right. Exactly.
I don't know, but she said it. They could have hit a button and.
So I have a comment from someone named Mike V, who you let me know if this sounds true. I remember meeting John at De Niro's when Nelson Mandela came to New York. Does that? Yeah. That was something that actually happened. Okay.
Yeah, it was Nelson Mandela. Yeah, and I got invited to hear him speak, and I think it was at Robert De Niro's restaurant. It was in Tribeca, and so I got invited to go. So I went, and Nelson Mandela. And I remember he goes it's good to be here. And when I was in prison for 27 years, I'd watch your movies, and it really helped me get through it. And he was just speaking off the top of his head. It was like the best speech I ever heard in my life. It was unbelievable. And Mike Tyson was there, and he goes, Mike Tyson, the boxing and this, and he tied it all in together. And with the freedom and the boxing and watching the movies. It was like and he didn't write it, and it was perfect. It was the most amazing, powerful speech, and the guy was amazing, and he just glowed. He just had this charisma, and he just sheen. Some people just have that just sheen. They just glow. Muhammad Ali had it. Certain people just have that.
Well,
and it was amazing speech.
Someone that we all know has that glow is, of course, our guest Jon Lovitz, and we're all always impressed by and the fact that I know you and Dennis at all is it's like being at Mick Jagger's house, to think that I used to watch you guys again when I was very young, while you were on SNL, while I was in middle school. I was a child, but
right, I'm not that old.
That's true, you're not.
Oh, you were Robert Graham because of me, yes.
So is Robert Graham a
clothing designer?
Are you? Who are you wearing now, John? It looks like the Nike swoosh.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, did we lose each other for about? Yeah, there's the swoosh. Well, somebody asked a question that I think if you weren't actively. What's that? Yeah, I can hear you now.
Glow. I'm gonna try
to glow for us. Again, Quadfather saying your wedding singer character was an all-time great, John. Were you even acting, or were you just being Jon Lovitz?
Of course I was acting.
Yeah. And of course, when it comes to acting, it'll always think of one of my favorites, Master Thespian, which the one with John Lithgow for me is an all-time great. Just sort of the back and forth between.
We did it 3 times. He was great to work with, and as far as hosts, everyone loved him. He was one of the nicest people ever. Just so nice.
Yeah.
So talented, but very kind man. Really nice.
Yeah.
Great.
Do you know New York-based comedian Kevin Brennan? So he was a writer on SNL in the early 2000s. Somebody seems to wonder if you might know him. You might cross paths with him. I don't think you tend to do a lot of stand-up in New York, not at the club level anyway, right?
No, I don't know him.
That's fine. That's absolutely all right. But can we do a casual sex remake with Dennis and John? I do have a screenplay. I have a treatment for that. I don't want to lie and say I have a screenplay. I'll send it to
Casual Sex.
Yeah, with you and Dennis in the leads. I think.
That was originally a musical play at the Groundlings Theater, and it was a big hit. And then Judy Toll and Wendy Goldman wrote the movie, and Andrew Dice Clay was in the movie, kind of playing the part in a way that I had. But anyway, they wrote that movie. But then by then, sadly, AIDS was everywhere. So because of that, they wrote the movie was Casual Sex with a question mark.
Oh, yeah. The punctuation, I guess, goes a long way. Mike V still talking about this Mandela event at De Niro's, but Joe Piscopo was there. And, I was earlier, I meant to mention Joe Piscopo in the sense that it's a similar moment in SNL. That first year that he was on, they fire everybody except him and Eddie Murphy. And then your first year, it's like you, Nora, and Dennis are the only ones that are brought back. And I think periodically they kind of.
I liked everybody. We became close. So I was like. I didn't like that they did it. I loved Joan and Robert. I liked all of them. The nature of I didn't think it was fair. They're all so talented,
Yeah, and look, I think it comes down to the fact
to be on the show, of course.
Yeah, but obviously, some people it's just not the right fit. I mean, Ben Stiller was there for a couple weeks while you and Dennis were on.
5 or 6 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and Janine Garofalo was on for a year, which she had a good run in movies. She was always a great stand-up, but it just, I don't know. I guess just sometimes
what happened was Janine in the press said, "Yeah, they're bringing me on to save the show."
Oh, well, you know what? That's a problem.
Even read that, was livid and said that's it. So they kind of tortured her.
Yeah. I think even if you think that's for your inside voice, John. I feel like you would know the difference between those things.
This is what my inside voice is saying. Does he see the glow yet? Jesus.
Oh my God, the glow is there. You know what? It's only fair that here. Okay, now we let everybody see the glow. Well, John _Lovitz on Instagram, Real Jon Lovitz on Twitter and X. We've got 1,500 people watching right now, John. What would you like to say to them?
Well, I don't know any of you, but if I guess you're watching, you're a fan. So Dennis and I, and thank you, and I appreciate your support all these years. And I never walk through a park, never. I always try to be funny, so thank you.
Absolutely. And
thank you, Christian.
Well,
I do wish your name was Jewish, but it's Christian.
It's the greatest shame of my life is that I was born Christian, and my parents really wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that's who I was. Well, John, I'll have a little bit of business to tend to, looking through chats and stuff.
Right.
But I want to let you sign off with your great character that what it was Conan who told you that. No, you said Lauren told you couldn't say goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, right?
Yes. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
And that was the great Jon Lovitz. Very excited for him to be here. Thanks to him. And thanks to Dennis Miller for also being here for the show. I'm going to go through the chat and make sure that we get to all of our super chats. But before we get to that, obviously, if you're watching on this channel, you are a fan of Who Are These Podcasts most likely. And there were two people that I made sure to shout out towards the later part of the interview while it was just John and I. And I want to share with you a couple of quick videos of me trying to pay $2 to get shout outs for the 600th episode of the Bladtcast.
I don't do anything weird. I see some new people with different pictures. Congratulations on 600 episodes. It's like episode 8. We're almost at 900 on these, but this is Patreon. I'm way over. I don't know how many I've done. I do 6 a day. I do 6 a week, 50 weeks, 300. I mean, in the last year and a half, I'm not even gonna do the math. Send someone the link, loser.
I left that last part in there because it made me laugh. So, Kate was unable to figure out how many he'd done. The problem is that he just said congratulations on 600 episodes. So the goal was for me to get him to say, Bladtcast, congratulations on 600 episodes. Now, KB kind of outsmarted me there, but don't worry. There's someone we all know who was fairly easily outsmarted.
The Bladtcast. Congratulations on 600 episodes. Is that true? I don't even know.
So I wanted to get some more of those. I really wanted a Helga and Lisa congratulating us, but they do the show at like 4 a.m. my time. So perhaps for a future episode. Before we get out of here, I do want to make sure that I get through all the super chats. And Reverend Shitstain, Powerful Pooper, here late, missed it. Can you do it again? Thanks. For you, Reverend Shitstain, let me pull Dennis off the green. Let me get Lovitz back on. We'll do it again. Or here's a thought, Reverend Shitstain. You could actually just watch it after the fact, and that would be easy to do. So I am going to go through the super chats because I want to make sure that nobody gets missed out. So the Quad Father, amazing cast assemble, Blad. I can't say enough about how great you all are. Thanks for the years of entertainment, guys. I did read that one during the show. Husey asked about their pieces, and Eric Connor led to the conversation about the fire. And Quad, I don't think I showed this one while Dennis was still on. I will make sure he knows what a fanboy you are. And Husey, I'm not going to lie. I saw this one, but I thought it was a little mean. And I also don't know that they would understand it. But I endorse this statement from the great Adam Hughes. Back then, could you guys have predicted that Anthony Michael Hall would go on to make cinema masterpieces such as Halloween Kills? Well, something to keep in mind, Hughesy, is that evil dies tonight. Evil dies tonight. We did ask John if he was at a Chili's. And this was actually the one that I was thinking was mean. I know how to fix SNL in 2024. Even more fake advertising sketches and comedy, hip hop music video, groundbreaking. Look, I think that SNL has kind of become a show that most people see in the form of clips that we have learned at this channel, clips that you never play on your show. Who are these broadcasters? Which is every Tuesday at 2 p.m. on this very channel, 11 a.m. Pacific. Myself and Eric Zane, we go through a collection of broadcasting clips from around the world of broadcasting. We asked about KB. We asked about the Casual Sex remake. And we have all those stories about everybody who was at the Nelson Mandela party. I'm not going to lie, Mike V. I thought that was made up. I honestly thought you had made all that up. And thank you to Eric Connor for saying Bladtcast is the ticket more than an hour ago. And I wish I had seen this earlier. We would have told plenty of Norm stories. They talked about Jim Downey, who obviously handled Weekend Update with Norm. There are so many comments in this chat that I am so appreciative of everybody who was able to be on here. And Corby is asking, do I need to go live so you can pay money to trick me? Absolutely. I will certainly do that. And Harpua, you don't know the show. I'm going to have to promote it again. Who are these broadcasters? Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the Who Are These Podcasts channel. I appreciate it. And yes, thank you, The Rules D. Point Dabble Point will be after this over on the Shuli Network. Make sure you check it out. I have honestly no idea who is on today, but I'm not. So it seems like people will probably be happy with it. And Silent Shape. I mean, I don't even know what this means. KB's human mask is sagging. But anyway, we have so many chats, so many people watching live. I'm not going to lie. I'm not used to this many people watching me live, except for the couple times I was on Point Double Point. And again, that's always a great show. That'll be up at the top of the hour, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. More than anything, I need to thank the great Dennis Miller, the wonderful Jon Lovitz for spending an hour and change with me. It's always fun. The fact that I even know people like this, that I get them to talk to me. I am just always like a little kid. I was trying to explain that to John, just how much I thought these guys were the definition of comedy as a kid. So the fact that I can get them to be on my show, I am always so appreciative. And of course, this portion of the show would be incomplete if I didn't thank the great Karl Hamburger for not just giving me the opportunity to do a show for the Who Are These Podcast Network, Who Are These Broadcasters, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, but also being so cool about this idea of like, hey, why don't we stream this from your channel? Because we've got about 1,600 people watching now, and only 200 of those are fake views, I'm told. I just got a DM about that. And let's just say, if this was only on the Bladtcast channel, less would have been watching. We would have had some less. But it was a fun chat, and I'm glad that you guys were kind and respectful in the super chats. It was more, I didn't want to break up the flow with talking to those guys. And please, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe to the Bladtcast. I do have my own YouTube channel, BLADTCAST. You would easily find episode 500 where I talked to Lovitz one-on-one for about 2 hours, and episode 400 where Dennis was on by himself for about an hour and a half. So, there's a decent body of work that I'm occasionally proud of. But the fact that anybody ever tunes in to watch me host is it's always very humbling, and I'm incredibly appreciative. And thanks to all of you for making this a tremendous success. And hopefully maybe in 2 years we could get Lovitz and Dennis and Carvey and Nealon, and we'll see who else we might be able to get. Maybe we'll get an even bigger show for episode 700. But if you enjoy Dabbleverse, Hackverse adjacent characters, you'll find episodes of my show with Husey, Lucy Tightbox, Little Lemmy from the great BYB podcast, and of course, Nice Doug from Good Times, Great Movies, recently talked about RoboCop with me. So please check out the Bladtcast. I appreciate it. BLADTCAST. Again, thanks to everyone. And you know what? Even thanks to John and KB for taking my $2. I have to apologize. I know that no one wanted to hear Lovitz say that Stuttering John was always a nice guy. I know that you didn't want to hear that. But remember, John's famous. So that's probably going to explain that interaction to you. Well, like I have said multiple times, Point Double Point's coming up at the top of the hour on the Shuli Network. And subscribe to the Bladtcast. Who are these broadcasters? Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And go to whoarethese.com. You can find the phone number there. Leave a voicemail for Who Are These Broadcasters. I know it's needy at this point. I'm just asking for a voicemail. Eric Zane needs this. I don't need it. I would just like a voicemail over there. Go to whoarethese.com and join the Patreon or subscribe on YouTube for some great bonus episodes. If you are interested in Stuttering John, the Stuttering John series where they're going back through old episodes of his podcast has been delightful, as is the series reading Julia Fox's book. So much great content over there. That is all the time we have for now. I appreciate all of it. And we'll see most of you next time on the Bladtcast, and some of you Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, right here on the Who Are These Podcast YouTube channel for Who Are These Broadcasters. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.